the title of the session is a Vico Office One Slab Hands-On. And Chris Mouflard from Vico is going to present it for us. And Chris is originally from the US. He gained his degree in Australia, so we can safely say we put him in the nose. He's been in recent times working in the US on 3 large health projects, and he'll be telling us a bit more about those in a session tomorrow if you want to catch the detail of that. And he's a specialist in LBMS, which is location-based management systems, which is quite obviously what we're going to see a bit of today. And Chris is now back in Australia as part of Trimble's rollout strategy in Australia. So thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much, Colin. Very kind. Welcome. Thank you very much for attending this session. We're going to introduce you to a product called Vico Office. Vico Office is a 5D integrated workflow tool. I think that it is one of the only ones in the world that I'm aware of that allows a BIM agnostic program to take authoring information, publish that, and use it for things like design management, cost estimating and scheduling, as well as being able to take that information out to the field in terms of like layout points or whatnot. Just to give you a bit of an idea of who Trimble Buildings are, international company. We were Vico Office, or Vico Software Department, was acquired in November last year. That's where I came across. We have multiple divisions in terms of virtual design and construction services, through to technical services like implementation. And we work with thousands of customers around the world, and I've been involved in over 700 virtual design construction projects. Myself, in my 5-year career, I've been involved in 20. So I've done a lot of different types of projects, relative to design coordination, through to 5D implementation and BIM to field rollout as well. So what is Vico Office? Starting from very high kind of level, and we'll get into the software momentarily, is that it's not a authoring tool. We're not a CAD tool. Don't do that. We're not an ERP. We're not an enterprise resource planning tool. We're not an accounting tool. We're everything in the middle. So if you were to take visual presentation, probably some companies will do just Revit, maybe Navisworks, change management, Navisworks or Excel, constructability analysis, Slab, quantity takeoff, QTO, cost estimating, Inbuilt. What I'm getting at is that there is a lot of solutions specific to one type of your business processes, but what they're not doing is communicating to each other. So one of the things that Vico Office aims to bridge is the fact that we roll all of these different business processes underneath one umbrella. And so being able to take 2D and 3D design documentation from build into the field, leveraging that information, the metadata that's within a BIM model or a 2D document, and then actually creating a 4D simulation, or really leveraging the quantities in that to understand what type of work needs to happen, and more specifically, how that quantity of work relates to a duration of time or a movement amount of people. And then obviously, the other end of that is taking quantities, leveraging that for quick design analysis and things like 5D cost planning and quantity takeoff. The richness behind this all is the fact that it's all built within a Basant database, or an object-oriented database. I want to get kind of boring. But the fact remains is that we're able to take that historical cost information and leverage it onto other projects. So again, reiterating that we take design information, we take cost information, we take historical databases, and we're able to roll that in to a more integrated environment so that we can cover again things from visualization through to production control. So one of the things that we're going to work through today is a simple slab exercise, but I want to take you through the workflow really quickly so you have an understanding of what the heck I'm talking about when we start to look at some of these terms and different terminologies, and how the software itself is able to calculate and translate this information to make it usable for construction management. So if we take a simple column, for example, in the software we call this a toy, or a takeoff item. That was happenstance, that wasn't on purpose. So the takeoff item is a simple column, simple piece of geometry, rectangular prism, but in the construction industry we know that to be a lot more. The fact remains is that based off this story we had takeoff quantities. And these takeoff quantities are what allow us as a construction company to progress BIM beyond just a visualization. So what I'm trying to get at here is that we don't necessarily need to model the rebar or the clad finishing or anything like that. We can derive this quite simply from just a 3D piece of geometry, whether that be a rectangular or triangular prism. We still have the ability to add more information to that so that we can derive the cost of rebar and the equipment, labor, and materials that would be required to install that completed column. Our next step, and quite interestingly, we go from design to cost to time, is that we're able to now break that up into a sequence of operation. We call that the location breakdown structure. That location breakdown structure allows us to develop a lot of outputs, specifically a schedule derived from the information within your BIM, not a simulation derived from the idea of what it could be represented as. So really leveraging that information across the board and onward and so forth to things like cash flow forecasting and understanding things like resource planning, procurement, demand curves, and whatnot. How it works, start with the quantity takeoff. We add additional fields of information to derive cost. Split that up into locations of work. We're all going to do this very momentarily, so I hope I'm not speaking too quickly. And then how we can pull that all together to complete a real 5D workflow. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to start, I'm actually going to change this step, but we're going to open up so everybody should have, except for you guys over there, there's 1, 2 machines if you guys want to have a crack in the software. We didn't put it on all the machines. I didn't think that we were going to have this machine. Honest. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start in the software. I'm going to give you guys a bit of an introduction of what it looks like, the different modules, how we click around, why we click around. And then we're going to set a budget. And that budget is going to be quite simply us attaching just a line item number to our cost plan. From there, we're going to publish a model from Revit into Vico Office. And then understand, we can have a little bit of a look at that. We're going to go through the activation options, understand the information that is inherently in that Revit model, and how we can go from there. We're going to then activate that model, do a quantity takeoff, check it, maybe do some reassignment of information. We're going to generate a cost plan, so we're going to start to add some costs to the element, that simple slab. We're going to generate a cost report, define tasks, map those tasks with the data that we created for our cost plan, create a nice little simulation, and hopefully we can all do that in 45 minutes.
That's a big ask.
I don't think so. I think that they have a very capable group of people here. All right. That's Revit. So please click onto your screen. And down the bottom, you should be able to select the Vico Office R4.2. So this is Vico Office. Welcome, everybody. There's a few different pieces that make up this software, and so I'll run through them pretty quickly. Along the top, we have a dynamic ribbon, and I say dynamic because every time we change a module, there's 8 modules in Vico Office. The ribbon changes based off our user needs within that module. We have a workflow here. This workflow is what is activated when we select those different modules. Right now, we have the master workflow selected, so we can see that there's, you can't see, I think there's 7 steps that would take a user through the various stages of completing the entire project. And then we have the view set here. In this case, it's the dashboard. So quite simply, we have a Vico license manager, or a Vico project server in this case, which is locally, but this could be stored on a remote server somewhere in a Citrix environment. Those are the types of implementations that we've done in the past. This section right here is the various projects that we have loaded within our Vico Office database. Okay, so I've already created 2 for you, but you can just click that new project, type in whatever you wanted to type in, press enter. But I thought we would just try to minimize the amount of time that we had to do anything. So let's select the BDO_1 slab, and then we have the option to open the project. So there's select that, you'll see the yellow here, and open the project. It'll take a second while it activates or searches out the database to make sure. Just click once. We're in a database, so we don't need to click 20 times.
Any questions about your companies that are using their content? Just something that
Thank you, Colin, for helping out. We should see a green dot here, which indicates to us that that project is now open. Everybody good? So what we're going to do here within the master workflow is that in that fourth selection option, we have the option to estimate. So this is where we're going to start. Because we have to, essentially we have to define a cost amount that we're trying to reach within our estimate, and that's our initial budget. This is the cost planner module. So it's a tabular spreadsheet. We call it n-tiered. And the idea behind n-tiered is the fact that you can make as many tiers of information as possible within the workflow palette. Number 4, estimate. So the idea here is that we could start to define budget quite simply. It's like Excel. You can tab, you can use cosine formulas, all sorts of stuff like that. And what we're going to do in this unit cost, we're just going to enter in $5,000. And that's going to be our initial budget to complete our simple one slab that we're going to do. You can enter in whatever you want, but that will make it kind of straightforward. So essentially what we've done is we don't necessarily need things to be model-based within Vico Office. So that's a very important thing to recognize, because not everything that you guys are going to be estimating, or your estimating team is going to be doing, will be model-based. There's just things that don't need to be modeled necessarily, like doorknobs or something. Yes, exactly. So that's why we can use simple formulas like this. We also have this UOM, or unit of measure. And in here, we can assume that our one slab could maybe be scheduled or initially priced based off the square footage or something like this. So what we're going to do quickly is back into the workflow. So we've set our initial price budget, and we're going to go to the Manage Documents on the left-hand side. And once that loads, we're going to jump into Revit. Which should be open in the bottom screen there, or the navigation bar. Yes. So this is Revit. It's an authoring tool, quite a good authoring tool by any stretch and by any means. And we have a very simple element within this, which is our slab, and we have a hole in that slab. Cool. So if we go, there's so many add-ins now. If we go to the add-in tab along the top of the ribbon there is a function called external tools. And we can publish that information directly from Revit or ArchiCAD or Takeoff, in this case Revit, into the Vico Office environment. Control O, open, and then go to my computer. I mean, you can take that project if you want. It's going to go through a little update process. And so in here what we're seeing is we have the two different projects. So we're going to add-ins, external, publish to Vico Office. Yeah? You guys should arrive at a screen like this. And what this is telling us is that we have two project databases within Vico Office, or within our publish option. And so we're going to select, in this case, the BDO _- one slab, or _one slab. And we're going to create a new model, and we're going to publish that to the Vico Office environment. And just click the Publish button. So why is this good? It's because what we're doing is we're taking all of the information from Revit, or from your authoring tool, and putting that inside Vico Office. We're not losing any fidelity by using like an IFC, for example, or DWG, which might not have the data richness that Revit does, or your other authoring tools. So that's why this is a very important step, and that's why we chose to do it that way.
So this is what you see on the screen, was pull everything from one background as well.
Everything on there. So we're going to jump back into Vico Office. Does it take all the information that we see behind the Revit model into Vico Office? Yes.
But it only exports what's visible on your screen at the time. So if you've hidden a whole lot of junk that you don't want to go across, that won't go.
Okay. So
yeah,
if you're hiding your family types and something like that. So now, hopefully you guys are back into Vico Office and you publish your model. You should see the folder name here and we have this GI block 3A, one slab model. Yeah? If we drag and drop that over the top, so you can see I'm dragging and drop here, I'm going to use the view synthesizer here, and we can now, so I drag and drop that into 3D view. I press the view cinch here, and then I use the orbiting tool, and we can see that piece of geometry now inside of Vico Office. You can use the up and down keys and whatnot to navigate around that. If I right-click on that line item within that left-hand list, we're going to change activation options. We get a list here, and this is what's important as somebody that's understanding when BIM models are developed, the type of categorization that's important, and the different options that we are able to have when activating a model. So relative to Revit, some of the things that we have are like family. So your family might be a slab. Family type might be a 1 or 200 millimeter slab versus the mark, which could be like a slab 200 millimeters purple or something. So again, we also see additional fields of information in here, like your Vico 02 or whatever. Those if you want to add different tags or levels of information within that. We're going to activate this model based off family and family type. We can click OK. Right click again and click Publish. So what we've been able to do here, and you'll see that that hazard symbol has disappeared, and that's because that's now activated within. Use the orbit. I just use family and family type. This is pretty generic. Pardon? If you right click and click Activate, we're going to activate that model. So what's unique about Vico Office to other products is that we don't use the Revit tables or schedules, pardon, to do the quantity takeoff. We have an inbuilt quantity takeoff engine, and it basically works like this. You have a 3D prism, we fill it up with water, and now we can tell you how much volume there is. Pretty straightforward to figure out volume. We have the side surface area, we calculate that based off height and length. So the reason why we didn't want to rely on the Revit schedules was because, first of all, we wanted to be able to produce another range of quantities. We call them TOPs, or takeoff quantities. And we'll see those in a moment when we get to the next step. I just want to make sure that everybody's clear.
The help file is very good to show you how Vico actually interprets the geometry, whatever that is on top.
Yeah, so the help file, there's a question mark up on the right hand corner. Thank you.
Thank you. Down at the definitions is where you see that it defines how it is interpreted.
Which one was that called?
Okay, in the sidebar you see there the
So this gives you an idea of the various things that we can get off a column. And based off the Revit tool or the modeling tool that was used, we can build out a set of TOPs, or takeoff quantities. So the next thing that we're going to click on here, we're going to go back to that workflow palette, and we're going to click in the content management, that takeoff item. And this is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to sit down. Yeah, number 2, content management, and then below manage documents is what we clicked earlier. We have that takeoff. So when I click on that toy or that line item, that takeoff item, we can see that it highlights this model or this slab yellow, which tells me that it's selecting. We'll see this little chevron sign to the left here. If we click on that, we get a list of takeoff quantities, TOPs. And these are construction caliber talks. So this is information that is derived around the various quantities that we'd associate to a slab tool that was modeled, or a slab element, I should say. So when we click off that, we can start to see that there's various different talks that we can use. So for example, if we were to take the net top surface area, we would see that it highlights in purple. If I look below, so I'm using my orbiting tool to look at the bottom part of the slab, we can see that that highlights in purple versus the edge surface area of the slab. These quantities are important because they're going to be used for a different variety of things when we're trying to build out our estimate, which is what we're going to jump into momentarily. So we're going to go to the Takeoff and Estimate tool, level 4. I apologize, it's a little small for me here. And inside, yep.
I was just wondering,
Yeah.
if the schedule's quantities didn't come up, was that because I haven't activated it properly, or
Because did you select activation options?
I thought I did?
That's a common
No.
So,
Right click on this, and then you have change activation options. Yeah. And then that way you can choose how you want to represent that information within the database. Yeah, family or family type. And then you're going to need to reactivate it or take off, recalculate takeoff items. So you can right click there, create takeoff items.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start to build out our estimate a little bit more. And so in the cost planner module, maybe didn't tell everybody, in this workflow, we're going to go to Takeoff and Estimate. So that's under number 4, cost planning and estimate, and then Takeoff and Estimate function. And we should get a 3D view up here. We should get the mini Takeoff Manager, or mini TOM. And then we'll get the cost planner down here. So what we're going to do in the cost planner is we're going to start adding some cost components. So add them one line at a time. One. And we're going to just spell these out. And so what goes into the costing of a slab, we've got some formwork, rebar, and of course, concrete. So when I click on that formwork item, we have this FX functionality, which is our formula editing tool. Hopefully everybody's somewhere around here. So we'll see that that slab element exists, that toy exists here, and if we take a click down there, we can see all the different takeoff items. We see an enter formula, and then the location breakdown structure. So the way that this works is it's a simple formula. It works off the syntax toy.top. So we have, in this case, and we want to calculate formwork. So I'm just going to highlight that original formula, delete it, and we're going to take the edge surface area. So if I click on that edge surface area top here, click OK, we're going to see that it comes up into Vico Office here. And we get green, which indicates to me that the formula is good to go and it's ready. I'll click OK. We see that that information is now pulling from the model to the line item in the cost estimate. We know that, oh, I put square, my bad, I've been living in the United States. We'll take meters squared here, the unit of measure again, meters squared, and let's assign a cost to that. $500. We're going to do the exact same thing for the rebar. This time, we're going to use the slab's volume. So we'll use the net volume. we can use the net top surface area for the concrete. This would be a ton. Well, aside, what's the cost of a meter cube of concrete? Like $350? Of it? Oh, so that's $3. I don't know how much that. What do we got for? It's just assigned costs. So what we've done here is we've assigned model geometry to the different line items within our cost estimate, and when we click on them, we can see how that relates back to the model. What we can do now, so we see that unit cost there is at $5,000. If I was to right click at the top level at this BDO 1 level slab here and activate assembly, we're going to see that that price has changed. So our initial assumption of $5K was insufficient. It's actually going to be $777 more. So now we're starting to leverage the power of model-based estimation across the board to different levels. But we're not done quite yet. We're going to add a little bit more information to this before we move on. So what I'm going to do within my formwork assembly is add a new subcomponent and add another new component here. We're going to call this materials, if I can spell, and we're going to call this labor. And we're going to assume our labor to install a meters squared of formwork. What we got? 2 hours, 1 hour, Sure? Look at over here like you know. So we can change this to an hour unit of measure, and we also know that the material is going to come out in sheets of wood, or in this case, we're just going to use a meter squared rate. And now we can build out this cost even more. So maybe we know that it's $50 an hour for a carpenter, and that our material per meter cubed is going to be $420. Again, I'm just going off assumption here, but what we're doing is we're creating an evolutionary estimate. So we're progressing the levels of information. You can imagine if we had just a massing model to start, now we're using more complex geometry to take it to the next level. We could do this across the board for the various tasks within this list, but for the sake of time, I think we've got another 20 minutes. We'll just stick it with that. So what we can do here again is activate that formwork assembly, and we can see that our price has changed yet again based off more detailed information as we've made it through the progressive estimate of this project. So what is really good about this is that if we were to model on a generic layering name or family name system, say like using a master class or a table 21 or something like that, what we could then do is have all these formulas pre-built. We could have what we call a data pack or a knowledge base, and then we're just throwing in formulas based off our reference database into this, and now we can cost a job quite quickly. What's even better than this, and what we're not going to necessarily go through here, is that if we were to make this hole a little bit bigger inside of our slab, then what we could do is reprice that quite instantly based off the same layer name from Revit into Vico Office. Now we've just updated our price based off a new slab, instead of having to kind of go back through the tape measure experiment.
It was good timing with that. About the 5-year data pack, just trying to system with covering me about the manual nature of what you're showing. There's a lot of typing, and that is actually not how you do it. You end up using these data packs extensively, and you just end up tweaking. Don't worry about the other stuff.
So what we're going to do quickly here is that what we marked up in our pricing, so what we need to do is kind of go back and adjust our formwork, because we missed out on pricing what would be the formwork for this little area in here. And so if I click inside the mini Tom view, open it up, and click the 3D tab here, we have the ability to paint. So the idea behind this paint functionality is what's going to allow us to create more detailed information around our cost estimate. We need to have this level of functionality or this discipline so that we can make sure that we are taking off exactly what we want. BIM is not a simple push and go click button, it's just not going to happen. But it does make the legacy processes a lot faster. So what we can do is we can use this paint, and I'm going to start to paint the insides of this, and I can see that my formwork quantity in my associated cost assembly is starting to go up. So instantly we're starting to see that there is a cost impact that relates to the time of our resource, as much as there's a cost impact that relates to the cost of our materials every time we're adding more information or taking away information from our cost estimate of our plan.
Chris, can you just clarify with painting? What do you have to have something selected? You have to have the quantity selected to
Yeah, so what I apologize, I kind of went a step ahead here. So you would drop down that list, we're going to select the edge surface area, takeoff quantity here, and then in that 3D tab, in our dynamic ribbon, we can select that painting mode tool. That painting mode tool allows us to select the various surfaces around that element. And I just selected the inside surface area, pardon me, for that slab hole, that hole is up there. So when I clicked inside the mini-tom view, I might click outside of the, exit the formula editor. Yeah. Click inside the mini-tom view. And then you go to, yes, click inside the, where it says more generic. You can drop down that list. So yeah, go to the left, so you drop it down, and then select the edge surface area. What? Oh, it's associated. If we would add more levels of information, we could determine what the sheet is. It's just like adding more. We just haven't built this out. Yeah, go on. It's kind of bad because we're going as fast as we can. At the same time, we want to keep everybody honest. So the next piece of this is that we're going to start to manage tasks. And we're going to click that. It's in the schedule planning workflow, level 5. And we've got these 3 cost planner line items, and we have our task manager tool on the left-hand side here. And now we're going to create our schedule. So within this, we're going to create 3 tasks: form, rebar, form. Okay, how much you got? 10 minutes? So what we're going to do quickly, very, very quickly, then we're going to assign the associated cost assemblies to the tasks that we just created. Five minutes? Okay, so we're going to do this really fast. What we're going to do is that when I open up, so I clicked in here and I used this chevron expand all hierarchy levels 1 click, we can see that we can drive duration based off the quantities within our schedule. So this is very different to just a simulation. We're now saying that we know that for form work that we have so many hours of labor based around that modeled element, about that quantity. And that's how we can drive a task. So we could say that 1 hour per 1 hour would give us 8 hours of work associated to just completing the form work. For rebar, let's assume 16 hours per ton. So we're now using what we call a productivity rate or a consumption rate to derive the real amount of time that it's going to take to complete this work. And that's what I've been doing for the last 3.5 years. I was doing this on a $1 billion hospital project in California. So it can be done. It has been done.
You're still saying.
Pardon?
You're still saying.
Still saying. So just kind of throwing in some numbers here, I just threw in a 2 there. So now we're starting to look at this. Our next step, which we missed, is we're going to define some locations. Do I have time to do this one?
Why don't you just go through it on the screen?
Okay.
And then just watch it, I think, because it's quite a lot to do in 5 minutes.
Okay, so what we would do here is we would define some sequence or some locations of work. So I can do this in a floor plan view. And what we're going to do is select my polyline tool. And we're just going to slice this in half. So I just made 2 locations. If I drop this list down, we'll see we have 2 locations. But because we've done split the geometry, we need to now do a recalculation because we've created new locations of work. So this is just part of the workflow in that essentially we've taken an element, non-destructively split it, and now we need to tell the software that that's okay, and we need you to recalculate. So I'll do this quite quickly. Back into here. I now have 2 sides of the arc. There we go. Our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to jump into this scheduling tool. So, Schedule Planner is a flow line based scheduling tool. It uses CPM as the foundation of how it works. So a tool like Microsoft Project, for example, is CPM pretty common. What we're saying or advocating within this process is that there's a lot more than 1 layer of logic. That's what you're able to control in the CPM environment. There's actually 5. And so that's why we're seeing the information a little bit differently. And so what I'll do quite simply is in here is I can go to the network view and I can create logic links. So like your start to finish, for example. So we would start maybe with our formwork, move to rebar before we pour. We now have a very simple schedule viewing in flow line. So the way that we would read this, location, formwork in this location to that one, to the next over time, right? What's really cool about this is that now we can start to optimize resource usage instead of just time alone. So instead of saying, oh, we have 10 days to do this, how many people can we cram into that room? You can give your construction managers the power to have an educated conversation. So we see that this rebar task is going to take an extended period of time. What if we wanted it to take that much time? Well, so we would need 2 people based off the productivity information that you provided to us. So this is what allows us to optimize resources, not just time. So we really understand what it's going to take to achieve that duration, as opposed to just we want to achieve it. We can also relate this back to the cost of achieving that duration overall, so on and so forth. So coming back into here, we can create a 40 group set. Slab. Just going to add some nice colors to this for our visualization. Now we have what really comes for free is that simulation. So the whole process that we went through, and I know that kind of everybody wasn't able to finish, but in 45 minutes we took a piece of geometry, we took a simple slab, and we created a 5D cost plan for it, quite simply. We could have taken it as far as we wanted to. We could have added more layers of information to derive exactly how many people per item that we needed to install for that. We then went into the next workflow, which was creating a schedule based around that information that we used for pricing. And as a result, we got a nice pretty visualization at the end. So really, we were able to take your ERP, or sorry, your CAD document, run it through a process that would have taken 6 different pieces of software within one environment, and then produce deliverables at the other end of that. And then you could pump those deliverables into a product, say like Prolog or ProLines or your ERP system to now produce invoices based around that information. There you go. So that's the world's first fully 5D integrated workflow. And it's a product called Vico Office. If you guys want more information or if you want to sign up to a structured evaluation program, which is 30 days, you and the software working through different parts of the modules by yourself, and we help you go through that. You can see me. And I really do appreciate all of your time to come out today and spend a little bit of time within the software. And I do encourage you guys to come along tomorrow morning at 11:30 to see me speak about, or to hear me speak about rather, 4 hospital case studies using 5D BIM.
And Bobby Clean shows up. They'll be doing one tomorrow at 10:30, which is an Australian case study we're building in Melbourne. We're in the process of doing at the moment using Vico, and the full BIM process right from the beginning to the end, basically. Hopefully they didn't frighten you off. It was what you just went through, I took 25 hours to learn, so it's a pretty neat program in the sense that it's quite a lot going on. But I hope you got an overview of what you do, and really takes particularly for construction guys, really starts to open up being to make a useful process. Any questions?
Yes.
Once you created those locations,
yes,
and that was used for the programming side of things,
yes,
if you flick back to the quantities, are they now by location as well?
certainly.
Cool.
So we can go to that location-based takeoff tool and drop it down. And so now we can see that so you can do this for your price estimation.
So you know how much concrete's in each wall.
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely. And what we didn't see within this, so if we go to that core task, I can start to look at what are, I guess this case, meters squared of concrete that we're doing. So again, we're using that across the board, not just for pricing or visualization, but also scheduling.
And procurement. The experience on site is that the guys really got off on procurement potential of this, because you can pull out very detailed quantity measurement documents for the guys to price against and to use for variation.
Can I be a pig and ask another question? For the scheduling side of it, do you have to have your cost plan broken down into man-hours and materials to be able to run the schedule, or will it just run from quantities?
It will just run from quantities, but you will have to provide a productivity factor in order to derive that duration, right? So that's part of the negotiation that I found. That's part of the negotiation that I found with the subcontractors on site, was agreeing to what their rate was. But in the estimating phase, for the 5D piece, we were working with like historical rates.
You can sort of split through the rates, best guesses, and then you test it through production as well, actually on site, and you go back and see what it actually turned out like. Predict that into the future.
Yeah, so what we didn't actually go through here was like a production control. So what we could do is actually track work as it's being done in the field. So we could say that formwork, let's add, and we finish this, then line duration. So what I've added some new information into this view set. So we had our target, which is this thick line here, the dotted line, which is our actual, and now we can start to see, really compare what we were planning to do, what is happening, and generate a forecast based off that.
Tell us about the red dots.
So these red dots are what we call a control alarm, and they tell us basically, if you continue down this path, you're going to run into problems because that's what's going to happen. So if I see here that this dashed line is our forecast. So it's telling us based off the progress of formwork in location 1, we assume that we can start rebar on this day if you want to maintain continuity. You can start earlier, but the fact remains that the formwork could interrupt that workflow. You wouldn't have that continuous resource usage all the way through. And so that's one of the processes, or one of the goals of this software, is well, the scheduling software is to help you plan continuous workflow so that you can manage resources more effectively and balance that work. So yeah, I knew this was a lot. Yes, please.
I was just going to ask, so say a building with 100 foundations or whatever, is it a manual task in Vico going through and selecting all those foundations, or can you do it quick time so it automatically finds it? Or would you go into Revit and create a view so you've only got like the foundation showing, bring it back and Vico and find that one?
Yeah.
Or is it time consuming?
So what we would do is, like, I think that's answering your question, is that we would have like a substructure model, and we would load the substructure model, and we would be able to estimate just based off that in early phase planning, and then we can manage it that way. But there are view filters in this as well, so you could use a view filter in the palette, which I did go through, which would allow you to isolate all your pile caps or all elements on this layer, and then you could go through and manage it that way. But for the purpose of like cost estimation, you could grab that line item as well.
The key really is the classification system. If you use a multi-pass classification system, the work's done. Because it matches up with the cost assembly when it gets into Vico, when you make that connection based on the classification code. So it just changes the way you model a little bit. Not really that badly, and it's quite easy to do. But the spin-off with Vico is huge.
Yeah, it's organizing your layers or your families so that they're usable downstream. So often when I was working on a construction, on some of the projects I was working on, we would get these models from like any services guys, and they'd be like round bend number 12. You'd be like, what the hell's a round bend number 12? And like you look through it, and what it was just like an elbow for low HVAC or low side HVAC, when it could have just been labeled low side HVAC. So there's those types of things that you can manage up front to set the expectation. This is how we want to model stuff. We can use it for 4D and 5D.
The 5D data pack that was alluded to actually comes with a 3D warehousing with Revit and AutoCAD elements already reclassified that you can copy off. So you can also use it as a starting point to build up your own data pack.
So what about like 6D? You guys have looked at animation? Are you going something about it?
There's a great company that's in the room today. But facilities management, the bigger picture of Trimble, Vico Office is a 3D management, 4D and 5D cost estimating integrated tool. That's what that does, and that's what it does well. And that's what it's going to continue to develop that. In terms of 60 BIM, I think is a great thing that's going to happen for owners, and that's what we're seeing a lot of space in. We have a product called ProLiance that kind of manage that to a certain extent, but the operate side of our portfolio is.
But the good news is that if you've modeled for Vico, you're ready for 60.
Yeah.
Especially if that's not.
But there's other tools on the market that are designed specifically for 60. But the inputs or the data or the work that you created in this can be published into those environments or can be used beyond just this workflow. But like I said, this is a tool designed for that, and that's what we wanted to do best. And I think that we are a world leader on that.
Can you export from Vico into other formats or
So
schedule or whatever?
So we use an object-oriented database, which allows you to like pack a file as zip essentially, so you can store that and share it. But you can do like Excel exports. We will have integration with our other products like Prolog and Mobile Logics and stuff like that. There is one other thing that I'm trying to think of, and it's CSV. So if you wanted to publish that to your robotic total station to do layout, you can lay out your points in here, publish that out to your thing. And there's one other thing.
You can put out a data set to P6.
Yeah, P6 or P3, so you could publish that information.
Where's that problem? Because you've got the location,
Which makes it more
complicated. Yeah, because that's the CPM thing.
It's a WGS management.
actually going out.
Yeah.
Coming in, not going to do it, but we wouldn't advocate that you run your project in CPM anyways. So.
Going out to Excel from all of the outputs and the cost plan and very powerful. I mean, we put out measurement documents from the 5D module for our construction guys to manipulate and clean up and to put into a format that they then put into their timber documents to go to the studies, so that they price that up. It's like pricing a bill, but it's not.
So you can incentive with a product of ours for a log of reliance.
Yeah.
So you can publish that information to Excel and use it to do your tendering.
You might have get with it. Chris is the triple sales guy, and I'm going to use it.
I wasn't always sales.
Okay, guys, if that's all the questions, I think it's much fun.
Thank you very much again.